who is actually doing. Franklin is helping me in these sections. We actually two together to go through this getting started to MySQL HeatWave for analytics and accelerating the query that we are doing in this hackathon. So if you have any questions during the sections, you can use chat room or Q&A button and submit your questions. Panelists will be able to give you the answer. Okay, so let's start. So today we will go through, first of all, about what it is. MySQL database servers plus HeatWave. And we'll try to give you the overview how we do this. Okay, it's the provisions to get ready for the service, and also the data, how we can get the data there. And thereafter, we will go through how to use that. First of all, how to connect. Okay, it's connecting to the service and through the network. Okay, in what way? One of the way that I want to show is the fashion service. And thereafter, we'll try to give you some sort of applications that you might be interested. I believe you guys may got the sections earlier regarding the Oracle Analytics Cloud. I will be showing the same, okay, how to connect the OAC with the HeatWave. Okay, let's get started. First of all, as the data, which is very important, okay, to be stored somewhere. Okay, MySQL is one of the very good use, okay, to store the data on the cloud. And we call this MySQL Database Service, MDS. So as a service, it's managed, okay, by us, by the cloud, by the vendor, which is the Oracle. And it is easy to use, point and click, and provision and backup, all this, okay, on us. And it is secure, okay? It is quite essential. Data being stored on the cloud, we need to secure the data. And as this can also be for enterprise, the organization using the database on cloud, it has to be enterprise ready, meaning we introduced using the enterprise editions with the support, with all the things actually we may want to use, okay, from the product for MySQL Enterprise Editions. And it has the compatibilities with what you'll be using, okay, MySQL on-prem or actually on cloud, they will be the same. And it is built on our Oracle Cloud infrastructures. So what is MDS and then plus this HeatWave? HeatWave is one of the innovations where we put this actually to accelerate, to empower the MySQL service to run fast. Okay, why it can be that fast and why this is handy for the OLTP application, as well as we talk about the analytics. Sometimes people using OLAP, right? Analyze the data. So people traditionally may get data into a OLTP system in MySQL database, and they like to extract data to somewhere else, which means effort, cost. Okay, as ETL require extra efforts to move data around and extra skills to actually to put somewhere else and using some other things to make the query and create the visualization part. So what today we actually introduce here is as the front line here, the OLTP engine as MDS, okay, on OCI Cloud, and backed with the MySQL HeatWave, it is the in-memory cluster of servers, okay, storing the data with high performance in-memory engines. We call this rapid engine, and execute the query fast, okay, and allowing us to use MySQL for OLTP, as well as now OLAP, and we don't need extra efforts to do ETL. So as what this means that the existing applications just no change and execute the query and getting the data, and the performance can go up fast as far as 400 times faster. Okay, we go move into this, okay, later on. So what exactly we are talking about. The MDS is the frontier which interfacing with your applications using MySQL protocol. That's your application, no matter this is Java, this is some open source tools, or what today I will introduce the OAC, the visualization part, talk through the connections to MDS. And this actually data stored in the MySQL database as InnoDB storage engine. And that data can push to some other server. We call this HeatWave cluster. This HeatWave cluster is a machine putting into a lot of memory. It is not one machine. It can be 2 nodes, 3 nodes, 4 nodes, up to 24 at this moment. So how big data can be? So each node can store up to like 512 gigabyte memory. For the physical server at the back end, back up all this data and pushing the data into this in-memory cluster and providing the extreme fast performance query and to your query. So how does that means? The data can actually store within the MySQL database and push as transactional and pushing to these analytical engines. We call this HeatWave, and it is stored here and there. And persistency actually maintained in the MDS. But this is actually pushed to the in-memory data in the cluster. When the data actually, the queries come into this MDS, it evaluate and optimize and find out, this is good to run in this analytic engines called HeatWave. It passes these queries to the backend analytics engines called Rapid. And the whole query executed on the backend store, with the HeatWave and passing back the results and to your applications. So insert update, send to the MDS, storing the data and persisting the MDS InnoDB, as well as pushing the data to the backend InnoDB, the analytic engine Rapid. And when making the query, it will try to evaluate whether it runs faster here or there in the HeatWave. And if it can actually be executed on HeatWave, that will be executed there, and result we pass back to the applications. So it can provide the fast performance that's up to 400 times speed up. This is one of the typical the performance benchmark, which we also see this on the website. We publish this TDCH benchmark, and that one we can see normally when just the same box without HeatWave, it runs what? 1,700 seconds as the execution time. With the HeatWave, actually what it does, it is actually just a bit of time, 4 seconds to return the results. So fast. So as the applications, we have the OLTP applications running with the MySQL, and you can create your application storing data with the MySQL. And you may want this queries to be fast enough to get back the data because the data can be big enough. So we put this actually top up with the MySQL database service and add the best in the HeatWave cluster. So in the middle, that's what we see in this HeatWave and MDS. And as the OLTP applications coming into the core, data is already built through the MDS and on OCI. And how about visualization of this data? Regarding OLAP applications, one of the things people may look at as the BI or warehouse applications, or actually you use some other tools, and that can actually be what we are talking about. Oracle Analytics Cloud, or Tableau, or QuickView, or some other things. So you build your applications, to visualize the data, which talk to the MySQL just the same. It is MySQL. So Oracle Analytics Cloud is called into this MDS and get data. So you don't change your applications. You don't actually talk directly to the so-called HeatWave, but actually it is the same. It is MySQL. Simply, we treat it the same, but run faster, extremely fast. So some other way actually we look into this is you have the application somewhere else. You want to move the data around. So the first is actually you can replicate data. You move the data, from your on-prem or some other places, and then replicate data into our cloud. And so we store there in our OCI, HeatWave, and your analytic applications can just run and provide your visualization data. So let's look into it another way. So provision, how we do this, okay, and import the data. The first part, let's go into the browser. Here, when we do this, actually, we have the database, and it is the DB system. Okay, I have provisions one HeatWave in here, Hackathon HeatWave demo DBs is right here. But for the first part, when you do this, it's simply you create and you click on the HeatWave. And what you do, you click on the HeatWave, you put in the compartment and put in the name and put into the actually the admin user, admin, yeah, some certain password which is valid, okay, with the password policy. And once it is there, and we can do this, okay? So this, once we set this up and we have the networking, which is the private subnet, and all this by default is actually using a specific image, which is the HeatWave, and the standard shape, it is actually just one shape, okay? You don't need to change this. But there is actually, we can do this advanced, okay, options. We may want to change the configurations and selecting some other configurations we want to change. For example, you may want the time zone to be changed to somewhere Singapore time zone with GMT +8 rather than the US time zone, because the database, when you select the time, likely you don't want to see the US time or you want to present locally time. That's why you may want to change this. So here, there is actually another configuration I configure with, like, for example, my item 2. This is actually the configuration that I created, and then I select the configurations with what the time zone already specified, and then click create. So one thing in here, okay, from the charging point, okay, if this is demo, I would rather than to disable the backup. If you don't need the backup, just disable it. But if actually for productions, for actually the system running, you definitely require the backup, right? So this is automatic backup. Okay, every day it tries to do this backup for you. Otherwise, for demo, I would like to disable this. I don't want to waste the space. And the other things in here is, okay, how much space do we need, right? So once we do this, okay, the database size here is 1 terabyte. Okay, if you have 1 terabyte, do it. If you have less, you can actually 512 up to you. So and then create. I'm not here to create the service because I have already done that. So as mentioned earlier, there is a configurations right here. So you may want to change, okay, one of the time zone. So I may change this and select the based on one specific one. So for HeatWave, I will choose the HeatWave shape where we can actually try to find out which one is the best, where we can do to change the shape. So let me move around. Yeah, there is 12 right here. So because there is no such shape that available, we can actually just right here back to the configurations, and there is one called HeatWave. You see HeatWave. So click on this one and then make a copy. Okay, copy configurations and then make your own configuration, say my config, and then this is like what I demonstrate item 2 configurations. When I do this, and then I will actually do the next, okay, and when the next, and what this actually I like is the time zone. So the time zone, maybe I am based in Asia. Oh, sorry. Asia, Hong Kong. So this, for example. Then once we do this, then we can actually set up the server. Okay, this is how your Linux time zone, your values, or actually do certain way. And there are some other configuration you may want to change. So basically, what I like to change is only the time zone in here. So let's just do it, and then I can create. Let's make it bigger. Okay, so copy, and then I have the time zones configured, and then yeah, this is invalid because the Hong Kong can be the capital letter. Yeah, that's valid. So once we do this, and we have the configurations, which is what the name is, MySQL HeatWave. Then when we create, we can choose these configurations to provision as new cluster. So once we have the MDS running, it does not have the HeatWave nodes provisions. What we do, assuming that we click, and thereafter we need to click on the HeatWave, and that one in here, there will be a create button which you can create and provision a cluster with 2 nodes. Okay, I have already done this because the time I don't want to spend time to create. That's why, yeah, you have to click the HeatWave, and then there's a button and click it, and you will actually see 2 nodes, 3 nodes. Okay, just click it, and then you will be provisioned. You'll be able to provision a 2-node cluster and supporting the MDF. So when that's the value, MDS and HeatWave, then we may want to move the data in. So the data can be on-prem, the data can be somewhere else in the other cloud, your applications, or you are actually on your notebook. So how can you actually move data? If it is small, you're just using the files. If it is big, you may actually can use our object storage, which store your data and moving the data and to our MDS and HeatWave. So here, I just to share some of the screenshot and how the way we move the data. And then we go straight into the HeatWave and the details. So how we can actually dump the data if you are using MySQL, okay, because you may have your machine data, which is not anything about MDS. So you want to move the data into the MDS. So you use the MySQL shell. MySQL shell is the tools which you can yum, you can install, you can Google and then find out where we can download the MySQL shell and use the latest versions, which today we have the 8.025. And once you have the installations, you can use the utilities and to dump all these things together. But before this, you may want to provision the object storage where you can store your very big data if you have it. So creators, we dump the data through this object storage and using the MySQL shell. And the way is to dump instance or dump schemas, depending whether you want the whole database, the whole server data, or you just want to have one schema, okay, to be loaded on the MDS. So the object storage to store your data, and you use the utility MySQL shell. And the way is utility stock dumps instance and then dump the data and back onto this object storage. And then using the same tools and load the data back, okay? When this actually connects to your database dump and connects to our OCI MDS and load the data. So the way how the MySQL shells can connect to this object storage using what? Using the OCI configurations. So basically the OCI configuration file include all these 5 lines. The 5 lines basically, it is easy to create. The first is here, you create your key. Okay, once you have the key, meaning your first part is your key file is defined. Okay, you just store somewhere and the key file. So once you have the key file and the rest is on how we create the key. So when we create the API key, which you click, when you click this, and then you basically, once you do all this and you will have the screen. And in the identity and then the security, you have the API key. And this actually contains all the informations, all the 5 lines. The 5 lines, it is in here, you just copy and paste and then send it back to your home directory.oci.config file. So it is all there. So it is not something you need to create with the complexity. It is just copy and paste. Simple. So once we have this, and what else? It is the object storage. So the object storage is you click on the object storage and create the one, okay, the bucket. And from the object storage, we have two things that to remember. Okay, once we have the object storage, we have the namespace, which is actually click on the bucket, and then you have the name here. And you will have the bucket name, which you try to create new name, okay, because the name actually you create and there's a name, okay, my bucket, this is my bucket and the name. So once we have this and also the configuration, the utility is simple. We connect to your own database and with the config files that we mentioned earlier, and on the bucket name and namespace, and the other thing is the compatibility, where we put all this into it. Okay, yeah, it is OCI MDS turning this true, and there is compatibility because your own main, yeah, this utility will try to convert whatever the DOM, okay, which has something which is we need to change, we need to tweak so that it can import. So it is actually a very simple command, okay, to change this. Maybe you have something called the primary key you don't have, if, just in case. I highly recommend you have all the tables with primary key. So if you create a table, make sure you have the primary key. Otherwise, you have to dump the data and put in the compatibility, ignore missing primary key. Otherwise, it will try to ask you whether you want something extra. Okay, once you do this, and this is to connect to your database, and then we have the provision, the MDS HeatWave, and then we load the data back. Okay, and we have this, we use the name, the same name, and pointing to the config, and also all this. And last thing here is about the GTID set append. So this is highlighted in here to make sure they are the same. So GTID is like a transaction ID. It notifies the server. Okay, here the source database has a ABCD transaction, and we actually commit ABCD in the target, which is the MDS. When we make replications at the end, if you need to do this by doing the channel, so they actually identify, okay, they are the same. The data can actually replicate across two database, two server, okay, with this GTID set. So what next? We have the data in the MDS on the server. So what next is about how we can change your database to use the Rapid. So here, this is the story. So the way we load the data to the MDS using MySQL shell, and it is actually stored in the InnoDB. So once we have the InnoDB, we need to identify which tables you want to push to load the data to the HeatWave, the backend cluster. So we identify all this table, and there will be a chance you want to exclude certain columns, okay, which you may not want to use, which you may have really big data image or something which is not essential for query, then we can exclude it. Okay, and there's also some sort of the support data type which is not facilitated by the HeatWave, then we may exclude the columns. And we need to make sure the HeatWave table all with the primary key as mentioned earlier. If you have certain table which does not have the primary key, you should either create a primary key or you just ignore and you don't choose that tables to be in HeatWave. And once we identify that, we can alter the table, okay, and secondary engine equal to Rapid. Very simple. Alter table and secondary engine equal to Rapid, and that's quite easy to use. So let's look at a bit. So here I have a short tables where it is connected to the database that I showed earlier. So for example, I try to create a table, okay? Create a table for testing, okay? And this table is supposed to be import somewhere or you create on the MDS directly. So I have the varchar 20, okay, as just, okay, not known, okay? This is primary key. And now this is InnoDB. And this is simply, it is not sending data to the backend HeatWave. What I do is alter table for testing and secondary engine and equals to Rapid. Simple. And after that, the table, when we show create table, we see there's actually for testing, we have the engine InnoDB, but the secondary engine is actually the Rapid. Okay, Rapid is rapid analytic processing in DRAM, in RAM. So it is actually analytics. Okay, it does this. It processes this in RAM, in the server, which HeatWave cluster in the memory to do all the jobs. So that's why we do this table definitions. If, for example, what I want to create another extra table for testing, where we have the a column, okay, testing 2, and I have extra column F2, which we have the varchar, and for some reason I have very big here and nullable. Just for example, this is table, so I do not want this F2, okay, to not F2, the for testing table 2, and modify column, which is F2 varchar for thousands, okay, now to be not secondary. So I can modify the column, not secondary, and what I do this is I can alter table for testing 2 and secondary engine equals to Rapid. And if I show show create table, I will be able to see this. This is not included to be pushed to the backend HeatWave engines. So there may be some column that you want to exclude. It is not secondary. So that's what I'm saying in here. Yeah, define primary key, and also they are altered tables. Okay, secondary engines equal to Rapid, and then load the data. So if I have the data, I want to push the data to the backend, then what I do is simple. So if I have the data, I insert, I create, I dump all the data. I can alter table, and for testing, just for example, and secondary load, and it is empty for sure at this time. Okay, so the data will be pushed. Okay, it is a snapshot at that point. But what about later? I change the application, I change the data. This is transactional data. When it is committed to the InnoDB, it will push automatically to the HeatWave directly. Okay, no worry. The data is automatically pushed to the backend HeatWave cluster. So that's what we call this change propagations. And change propagations will always transfer the data from InnoDB and send to the backend. So after this, what happens to, if I want to identify whether we have the change propagation status, we can actually show the variables and then see what happens. We can actually select the tables and then see if all this table actually is running. Okay, so those actually you can do this, and you may have some certain status that you want to check. So here, when we want to check, we can actually show global status, and like Rapid, okay, percentage, and all this. What happens to this is we have the change propagation start. We have 2 nodes actually running, and the service is actually online, right? All the rest is just some other things that you can ignore for the time being. So how the rest? So if when we have the data ready, we have provisions, and we need to connect to it. How can we do this? So connectivities can be a number of options. Your applications running as VM on our OCI, you just connect to it, okay? Because the IP address, all this is actually connectable. And what else is make sure your security rules is actually on your public subnet. You are able to access to the private subnet, because your private subnet may be protected. Even the public subnets cannot access. So from the security rules, you want to get the ingress, okay, to allow access from the public subnet into the private subnet. That's the first part. What else? Other than this, if we connect from somewhere else, we may use some other techniques, okay? Another point here is, just for example, we may want from here, my notebook, okay, through the internet, okay, I install my SQL on my Macintosh, on my Mac, and sending data, okay, over the internet to my private subnet. How can we do this? We can create Bastion server. Bastion server is one of the services in the OCI, or you can create your VM and do the SSH tunneling, or there's many other options using OpenVPN and connect the channel, so your server in your on-prem and also on the cloud, they can actually bridge together with security. Or MySQL router, which on the VM, and then expose the router, which is MySQL components, to the public access. This is not a good way because you expose the data to everywhere. Okay, and there may be the OCI of connectivity VPN, okay, using Fast Connect, some other deep dive techniques. So for today, I will introduce some SSH tunneling with, like, you create your VM and you do the tunneling through this. Okay, tunneling is like SSH and -n and your key file and into your OPC and connects to it. So by mapping the port number, for example, your local port number 3006 to your provision VM, which can connect to your database. Okay, so your MDS, your HeatWave private address, and then sending data across. So once we do this, your local on your notebook, you can actually directly to execute this -u, and connects to your database. And the other option is to use Bastion servers. Bastion service is what? So let me show you. Okay, simply we can go into here, Bastion server, then you can create the servers. Okay, once you create a server in here, you can create defining a name and also where we connect to and which subnet you want to bridge. So I can create this to bridge my MDS where it is located in the private subnet, and putting your IP address or the range that you want the external as a source to connect to your target destination in the private subnet. So for here, as simplicity, I put the everywhere. Okay, and hitting the enter and then create. So in here, I don't click create. So it's already provisioned, okay, one service in here. So this service, once it is provisioned, I can create a sections where I can create sections. For example, I can create a sections to port forward where I have the IP address, which is 109 and 3006 to my private address. And I will put the key files where the key file, the public key files is here. And then once we do this, okay, I have the sections which connect up to 3 hours, okay, up to 3 hours. And the IP address, okay, I will be getting this, sorry. So by doing this, you can see, create all this IP and with the keys, and then we can actually look at this, will SSH command, and then seeing this, and then copy the whole string. And this is the way how we have the internet IP host name, and then we can do the SSH tunneling. Okay, I'm using the Mac OS, Apple OS, so that's why I can use SSH. Or if you have the Windows, you can use PuTTY. The PuTTY can actually do the tunneling the same way. Yeah, it is more visual. So if I go back and look at this, the section is still create, maybe in another 2 minutes. Once we have this, then we can actually connect to it. Another way is use OpenVPN, but I just put it in here. If you have, at the end, you have some more advanced applications you want to build, you can use some other way to connect a tunnel between your data center into the OCI. So I'm not going through this in details. There's other way, okay, as there is a risk you expose data in the public internet address. I believe this is just testing, you'll be good. But if this is internal, you may want to actually use the router as like VM and then connect to it. Okay, I will not explain this in more detail. Now, let me go to a demo using a Grafana. The first part, Grafana. So let's say the Grafana I have installed on my VM on the OCI, which actually is running the service. Okay, so this service, I believe, has just restarted. Yeah, let me connect to it. Yeah, it just restarted in 2.8 hours. That's why, yeah, in the, let's me go back. So the Grafana restarted. Let me go back and connect to the service. Hold on. So I will be connecting to my server where I will be running so I have the COVID as well, and so tables, and all this table has not been loaded. So if you look at this, this is empty because I don't have any tables with the secondary engine equals to rapid. Now I alter table, for example, country alter table, country and secondary load. And alter table province secondary load. And alter table patient secondary load. So it is very big table. How big? 62 million records, 30 million records. And here, so it is a big table, and I'm trying to load this data, okay, to treatment secondary loads to the HeatWave cluster. Okay, so once all the data into the HeatWave, I can do all this query in a much faster. In what magnitude? I will be showing this in a few minutes. So you can see I alter all the tables. Okay, what else? Table case. Secondary load. So in here, now if I try to refresh the screen, you'll be seeing all this table now has already been loaded. Okay, and all this query, when we explain in the query plan, it is running with the rapid query engine. So you can see it is running fast or actually slow. Let's try it. So I try to copy a SQL statements from here. So what I do in here is this, when I try to put this explain query, okay, so what I can see, it is actually running rapid. If I try to do this with the engine not using, okay, I try to turn off, okay, I can turn off, not using secondary engine. That will be using query plan, not the rapid engine, but using file sorts. Okay, it will be slow. How slow? Let's see if I do this, okay, and what I do is I put this, okay, to run. Sorry. When I put this select statement and then run, okay, so take long time, okay, but what if, yeah, let's say this can be actually a minute, okay, running with a minute, but if this actually running in rapid in here, we are actually seeing this running fast. Oh, sorry. Instead, So here we can see this actually running the data. Oh, let's do this again. Oh, this is 19 seconds. Okay, so if this is actually seeing this with rapid engine, how fast can this be executed? 0. Here. So 19 seconds over 0.3, it is almost 60 times faster. 60 times faster than here. So as like how we can show and using the Grafana, and then we can create this application like as dashboard. So another way is how can we actually use our Oracle Analytics Cloud to access the MySQL database service with HeatWave. First, the last sessions before my sections now, you attended and you might be able to see how OAC is, can be used. So you provision the analytic OAC, and you may create the private access channel and connect to it, and then launch your console as homepage and create MySQL connections to your service and create dashboard, create data set and create a dashboard. Let's do a bit on this. We move to the cloud in here. I have the analytics and there is the analytics cloud. So because this section is not OAC, I just to share to you how we can create and provision the instance. Once we have this and you have the line here, I click on this. There's a private access channel. Okay, there you can create one. Okay, I have already provisioned one private access channels to connect to my subnet. That's why it is easy for me to connect to my subnet. Okay, directly without going through internet. It's actually internal route. Okay, from the OAC service into the MDS into the HeatWave. So I can click the homepage. Okay, so and launch it. Now, what I do here is I click the homepage, and I also at the same time, I use Chrome right here to connect to the server, okay, from my side. So I have two connections. I have two connections, okay, one page, the other. So I will try to use this. Actually, in here, when we do this, we can actually create a connections. Create connection. Okay. So when we create connection, there is a MySQL. Okay. So we create a MySQL connection. So the host name, because we have the private access, we can go into here and back to say the database. And in here, I have the connections where the Hackathon DB, I have the endpoint address, and this is the name. So I can put this, copy, and put it to the host name in here, a full name, and the port number where I do this. And because I have the COVID-19, I can put this, and my COVID-19 demo, where demo DB, and the name where I put this, and then create. And there will be, you try to create a new connections and then going through our private access channel. So you can see this connection, I create successfully. So remember, we can create connections, go through the private access channel, and then we can create the data sets. Okay, the data sets where we connect to through just the way I provision this connections, and I can choose the COVID database and put it here. So I do cancel in here. I will use the other screen to do this. Okay, I will try to click on one of the here, and I use the Chrome where I click on the analytics, Okay. And I open the analytic homepage, the console in Chrome, where because on Safari it does not allow copy and paste, I need to use Chrome to do this. Okay, this is the reasons why I create this. So I create a data set, okay, where I choose the database where I just create and the COVID database. What I want to do here is I want to grab the SQL statements from here, which I don't want to type. So I want to copy and paste and then put it in here. So I can enter the SQL statement and then I can actually put this and then drag this to here. So you can see this is how I put all the data in here. Okay, so I can put the data as live data and then save it and add the data as today we have the June 1st, June demo, and add this as June demo as data set. So this actually load the data from my database. So once we have this, and then we want to create the dashboard, right? We have the data set, and this is all the data. And what I want to create a project, and this project is to see how we want the data. So for example, the country name, and then we get the best here visualizations, and may not be a very good way. We want to grip this as the map, and we want the country names to be with the colors. So you can see, easy to use, right? Easy to use. And then we may want some other things where we want the calculations, where we want the count by the province or something like this. And we have the aggregations where we want to count the number of columns, where, for example, count the ID, and we have this like my count. So as my counts right here, I save it, and I can create this as another visualization where you can see this is my count, and I can put this as like at the bottom, so you can see from here. Oh, why? So here I can, because right here I can use this as filter. Okay, so once we have the filter, and we can choose this, and you can see.
I think it chose the wrong table, I think.
I choose the wrong table?
Yeah.
No, this is, are you sure? No. It is row limit. Exit max row limit, because one CPU has row limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we may want to have the province, okay, to share with the category as like the chart. So once we put this, and it tries to find this, okay, 707, where we may want to have some chart, okay, just for example, a chart right here. So you can see, so for China, okay, we can actually visualize so many. So easy to put this drill down way of how many patients for the COVID during the time in my database. So there may be in here, Canada, so the province is different. So here I want to tell you, it is easy for us to have the OAC and connect to the HeatWave and showing the best visualization and simply connecting them together. And back here, I hope the sections is easy. Create connections, getting to drill down and use filters. and putting this like the OAC features, and I'm not sharing, I'm not teaching, okay, OAC. I'm actually get you to know OAC is the way to visualize the data, and it should be very easy. Hope the sections is useful to everybody. And that's the end of today. I hope everybody enjoyed the talk. Thanks a lot. Any questions? Ryan, is there any like Q&A questions?
Not, yeah, not, there's
Not much,
no question. Yeah.
Okay. So, Daisy, are we going to close this, or there is extra things that we need to do? Stacy? Sri, are you here?
Yep. Yes, I'm here. I think there's no more question. I think we can